In today's video, we're covering every single out player, doubtful player, and questionable player for Week 5 fantasy football and analyzing which players may benefit the most from their absence. And unlike other pages, we even have some defensive players on this list who, with their absence, will make your offensive players even better. Welcome into No BS Fantasy Football. We may be one of the smaller YouTube channels, but we do some of the most research. And we're going to be making this injury video for you every single week. So make sure to subscribe to get an advantage over your league mates. We're going to start with the unfortunately many out players for this week. And you may see Jordan Mason. He is playing, but there's 3 out Vikings offensive linemen. And this week, Jordan Mason has a very difficult matchup against the Browns defense. We jump into the matchup tab and you see David Montgomery last week, 1.2 fantasy points. Jordan Mason is going to struggle against this Browns front with 3 out Vikings offensive linemen. I'm going to leave Jordan Mason on the bench. Now you can kind of see where I'm going with these out players, because while CeeDee Lamb is the out player here, we want to talk about George Pickens for fantasy football, and he's another great start this week. So far with CeeDee Lamb out, he scored 17.8 points. He scored 33 points against Green Bay, and this week against the Jets, he has actually a pretty good matchup. You may be worried a little bit about Sauce Gardner, but when we look at the matchup tab, you can see every single week there have been startable wide receivers from DK Metcalf, Calvin Austin, Emeka Egbuka, Mike Evans, Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle. The only week it didn't work was week 2, but the Bills wide receivers spread to the tight ends, and pretty much everybody on their team gets the ball. But teams with dedicated wide receivers who are consistently getting volume all had good weeks against the Jets. Speaking of the Jets, Braylon Allen, Breece Hall's key backup, is out for this game. Amazing opportunity for Breece Hall because they don't really have anyone else to give the ball to. Even in your smaller leagues, I don't care what size your league is, you have to lock them into lineups. I told you I was going to talk about some defensive players missing this game, and the Ravens defense, almost as a whole, is missing so many starters, making a player like Woody Marks an excellent start this week. I think, again, in almost any league, he has to be a start. You go over to his matchup tab, you see his route rate has been increasing every single week. His snap rate has been increasing every single week. And last week, he dominated with 2 touchdowns, 28 fantasy points. And Baltimore is literally the worst team in the entire league against running backs. And with all of their injuries, it's going to be a huge opportunity for Woody Marks. Zay Flowers is healthy and playing, but Lamar Jackson is out, meaning backup Cooper Rush is coming into the game. That gives Flowers a major downgrade because Cooper Rush has one of the lowest depths of target in the NFL, which could be good for Mark Andrews, but it's just bad news for Zay Flowers to not have Lamar Jackson, someone that's really drawing the defense up. But I do like Justice Hill. That's someone you can add off the waiver wire if you're missing any of these out players, running backs or wide receivers, because last week he had an explosive game in 5 receptions for the Ravens. And this week with Cooper Rush at quarterback, they may need to rely on that pass a little bit more, especially if the Texans are really focusing on stopping Derrick Henry. Alec Pierce of the Colts is out this week again. Michael Pittman Jr., a great start. Tyler Warren, great start. Jonathan Taylor, great start. It just takes away one of those deep threats for the Colts, giving everybody else an extra opportunity, extra target in this game. Tyreek Hill is missing this game. This is his first full game out for the Dolphins, meaning Darren Waller is stepping up as a key target. And we saw him in week 1. He had 3 catches and 2 touchdowns. Now, why am I so excited about him this week? Well, you look over at his snaps, he barely played. And when he was on the field, he was getting targets. He's coming off an injury. He's getting back into shape. So this week, his snap percentage should increase, and he's going to be a main target for Tua. Remember Jonnu Smith last year? He's being peppered with targets every single game. That's going to be Darren Waller this year. If you don't have an elite tight end option in your starting lineup, you can start Darren Waller. If this guy is on waivers, you have to add him immediately because Chuba Hubbard and Jatavion Sanders are both out for the Panthers. That's 2 of their key offensive weapons, giving backup like Rico Dowdle and Ted McMillan some extra responsibility in this game. They also have a great matchup against Miami. You can see 23rd against running backs, giving up a lot of fantasy points. If he is available on waivers, I would add him and start him. The Bucs team, Mike Evans is still out, and unfortunately, Bucky Irving is out as well. That makes Rashad White an amazing start this week. Same with Emeka Egbuka. I like Chris Godwin as well, who had 10 targets last week. Remember, I told you there was going to be some defensive players to highlight in this video? Devin Witherspoon, a 2-time Pro Bowl corner for the Seahawks, is out in this game, giving Egbuka and Godwin an extra boost. For the Commanders, good news, Jaden Daniels is back. That's a huge upgrade for them this week, and Deebo Samuel is really the only healthy wide receiver. We have Terry McLaurin out and Noah Brown out, leaving Deebo to be the top target again this week. We can see 3 out of 4 weeks, he's been dominant for fantasy football, so an amazing start this week for the Commanders. And I think if you're hurting at running back or wide receiver, meaning you need a flex player, look for Luke McCaffrey. Over the last 2 weeks, he's had a touchdown in each of those games. Now, not too many receptions, but he's finding his way into the end zones. Now we're jumping to the questionable players, and the players you'll see on the screen are the questionable players themselves, starting with Brock Bowers. Now, he is expected to play in this game, so that's the key update a lot of you are waiting for. He also has struggled so far this season. We look at his points per game, under 10 points in 3 out of 4 games. So him dealing with a little bit of an injury, I would expect around that 10-point per game level. So if you have someone like Jake Ferguson who's been dominating and scoring way more points, you may want to sit Brock Bowers this week. Wait till he comes back. Wait till he shows that involvement before we sit a player like Jake Ferguson who's been absolutely crushing. Taysom Hill is questionable to return this week. He had that ACL tear last year. And Juwan Johnson, he's expected to play after logging limited practices Thursday and Friday. If Taysom Hill plays, Juwan Johnson may not be as strong of a start as he's been this season. And Taysom Hill, who knows how he could get involved with his team. The Saints offense has been better than a lot of people, including myself, have expected. So keep an eye if you have Juwan Johnson. If Taysom Hill plays, you may want to play another option if you do have one available, like Hunter Henry, like Darren Waller. If Taysom Hill's out, Juwan Johnson is active, which is expected this week, then Juwan Johnson is a good start. Calvin Ridley is questionable for this game as well. Now, I don't know if you're starting him anyway. He's already not been that great for fantasy football, but I do think if you have Alec Aomanor, he could be a decent start this week, especially if Calvin Ridley misses. Tajay Spears. I would honestly pause the video and go check right now to see if he's available in your league, because right now he's on IR, but he could be activated. And if you can add him for free, that's a good bench option to have. And the Titans, they haven't really produced much value so far this season. Even Tony Pollard, with all of the work, has been averaging only 10 points per game. But if there was a Tony Pollard injury or Tajay Spears comes back and looks good, he could be a somewhat startable flex option, especially as we head into bye weeks. Now for our one doubtful player for this video, it's Tyrone Tracy. He needs to get back because Cam Scatterboo is taking so much work and really standing out. The main worry is he comes back and takes away some of Cam Scatterboo's receiving work, something to watch out for if he does play. I still think Cam Scatterboo is a great start this week with a solid matchup. But I also want to talk about the Malik Neighbors injury. Of course, he's out for the season, first game without him. I think Darius Slayton is the start. He replaces that downfield threat. And if we look at Jackson Dart last week, he had 111 pass yards. So that means someone like Wandale Robinson, there's just not going to be enough volume, I think, for him to be startable, even in PPR leagues. And we'll see how that plays out. First full week with a game plan without Malik Neighbors. But Darius Slayton, even with 3 or 4 targets, could be a good start because you're just hoping for that one big play that's going to get you down the field and maybe the touchdowns. Those are your week 5 injuries in fantasy football impact. Drop any start sit questions you have down in the comments and hit that subscribe button to get videos like this every single day.